This is Hockey Docs Presents the Junior Hockey Giants Podcast. Each episode, we bring you exclusive feature interviews with the biggest stars in the game, past and present. From Memorial Cup champions to today's brightest NHL stars, we take you behind the scenes to hear how they learned their trade in the Canadian Hockey League. Your host is Aaron Bell, longtime OHL communications director, writer, photographer, and documentary filmmaker with decades of experience covering the game. If you love junior hockey, this is your all-access pass to the stories that made the game what it is today. Now, let's drop the puck on this week's episode.
Few players have made a bigger impact on and off the ice than PK Subban. In this episode of Junior Hockey Giants, the Norris Trophy winning defenseman reflects on the roots of his hockey journey, his formative years with the Belleville Bulls of the Ontario Hockey League. Subban shares candid stories about the people who helped shape him as both a player and a person. Longtime OHL Commissioner David Branch, former Bulls coach and GM George Burnett, assistant coach Jake Grimes, and Director of Hockey Operations Barclay Branch. Their influence went far beyond the rink. For Subban, junior hockey was about learning to grow up, take responsibility, and become a leader. He also opens up about the mindset that fueled his rise, from World Junior gold medals to NHL stardom. Whether it was folding dress pants the right way or showing up in the game's biggest moments, Subban explains how details, discipline, and drive defined his path. We talk about legacy, identity, and why, for him, the biggest motivation wasn't fame or fortune, but the simple desire to make his parents proud. If you followed his career or just want to understand what it takes to become a giant in the game, this episode is for you.
Well, first of all, I don't feel like I can really talk about my hockey career without at least mentioning David Branch's name or Barclay Branch's name or George Burnett's name. To me, I put them all in the same category because not only did they aid, help, and support me throughout my time, and I did a lot of work too, but they were very, very important to my growth as a young man coming into the OHL at 15 years old. And they were very, very important to not just my growth, but my brothers as well, Malcolm and Jordan and our whole family. And, to me, that's where my whole kind of career started because, it wasn't just about me. Junior hockey is about family. And, it's, you're going there as a boy, like you're barely even a boy. You're just like still learning how to become a young adult, at that age. So, it's a huge takeover. David Branch's role and how he set the tone for the expectation of not just myself, but every player coming through and seeing the value in players that come from great families, that have great parents and, wanting to welcome them and open their arms to not just, obviously the tremendous level of hockey that you're going to be accustomed to seeing every night playing in the OHL, but the other opportunities that come with it. And, at that time, maybe the vision for me, was clear about my goals of making it to the NHL, but those visions weren't clear maybe for everybody else. And in that case, you got to think about other things, scholarships, schools, opportunities, and what other opportunities the OHL can bring you. And that's what I really loved about it was that, even though we were playing semi-professional hockey, it felt like, David Branch and Barclay Branch all had an invested interest in every single one of the players that played in that league, that they cared for us like we were their own kids. And I felt that, I felt that definitely from David. And that's why I jumped at the opportunity to speak so candidly about him because, I never, one thing through life moves pretty quickly and things happen and you move on from things, but you don't forget and you don't forget the people that have helped you get to where you needed to get to. And David Branch has been a huge part of both not only my success, but our family's success as a whole. you're going there to hopefully live out your dream of playing in the National Hockey League. But, that's the end. That's the end goal, right? Of where you're trying to get to. And Jake was always great at putting things in perspective and how PK can get small wins and get a win today, get a win this week, get a win every month and build up to it. And I remember when I got to my draft year, Jake was the one who helped put together my highlight tape to send to scouts. And I remember that. So, nobody skipped a step in junior hockey when I was in the OHL. And that's what I loved about it, is that when I look back, I can remember vividly the process of me growing, both as a player and as a man. George Burnett, my first exhibition game, I remember I was a little bit nervous and I was in the change room and hanging up my dress pants, and George Burnett walks by and he sees me, he goes, PK, that's not how you hang dress pants. And he comes over and he shows me, he puts the seams together and folds it and hangs it up. And people don't understand, you need that type of guidance and that teaching. I don't know how many coaches would take the time on those types of details, but that speaks volumes of, what the OHL was for me. I didn't have my parents looking over my shoulder for 4 years. I grew up in a family with 5 kids. So I was used to being in that family environment. So, those things may not have been as important for other players, but they were important for me. And to be away from my family at such a young age and being so close with them and growing up in a West Indian home, but having, Jake, having George, having Barkley Branch, having David Branch, and these people that were resources for me, that weren't there to coddle me, but I could ask questions to. And they were always willing to give me the information to get better. And, these are the things. I know you asked me a question, but these are the things that just come to mind when I think about Belleville and my personal experience there in the OHL. I always tell people this, the athletes that I looked up to were athletes that you could rely on when the biggest moments, came in sports. And to me, everybody gets rewarded for great regular seasons and great games in the regular seasons. But here's the reality. If you're on a really good team, you can put up good numbers. You can have a great season. If you have a coach that really loves you and wants to put you on the ice all the time and puts you out there with empty netters, you can get your cookies. But the one thing is I knew that when all the bull crap and politics get pushed to the side was when that puck dropped in the playoffs or on any national stage. Because I knew at that point in time that this is where you define yourself as the best. You have to do it on the biggest stages. You got to do it in the biggest games. And, you have to have great regular seasons too. But to me, you're defined in the playoffs and the postseason in those moments. And for me, I wanted to crush everybody in those moments. I wanted it to be definitive. It didn't have to happen for 82 games or the 60-something games or 50-something games that you play in the OHL every year. But when the chips were on the table, I had to get a pound of flesh. I had to be accounted for. And, that's just the way I was raised. That's the way that I envisioned being an athlete. It was only that way. I never envisioned myself being any other way because I watched Kobe do it. I watched Jordan do it. I watched Tiger Woods do it every Sunday. I watched athletes go out there and, want to kill everything, want to win everything. And those are the people that I drew strength from, that I drew power from, where I got that drive that I could do anything that I wanted to if I just put in the work. And for me, aside from the work that I did in the gym, I probably trained the most important muscle the most and the hardest, and that was my mind. And that was to push myself. And the only way to do that was to put the responsibility on yourself to show up in those moments. And, by the time I got to the NHL, it was no longer about nerves. It wasn't about, it wasn't about being nervous or being scared to make a mistake because I had already did it at the World Juniors. I had already gone through, the OHL All-Star Game. I had already gone through the Memorial Cup and OHL playoffs. And now I'm living my dream. So the last thing I'm thinking about is being nervous. I'm saying, I don't care if it's Crosby, Ovechkin. I don't care if it's Lidstrom. I don't care who it is. If you get in my way, it's going to be a problem. And I don't care. The respect will be shown off the ice. It'll be shown in front of the camera. But when that puck drops, there's no love, And that was something that was different because nobody really expected that from me. I'm a nice guy. I'm a fun-loving guy, but nobody saw that part of my game that was coming. Nobody knew that competitive part of my game that was there. Nobody knew what drove me, but they found out. Well, I think it's a responsibility. I looked up to a lot of athletes, and I was so used to seeing people be critical of how they lived their lives and the things that they wanted to do. But more importantly, I saw athletes before me. I spent a lot of time around the old timers, and I probably don't talk about it a whole lot, but, I used to do the Toronto Professional Hockey School in Toronto, which is, based around the Toronto Maple Leafs. And you'd have Nick Kyprios and Johnny Bauer and Daryl Sittler and all these guys come out. And this was when I was 5, 6 years old, 6, 7 years old, 8 years old. And I'm going out there and I'm working on skills with these guys. I'm watching Mike Johnson come out. I'm watching all these different players come out and be around us and these legends. And I'm watching them take the time. Matt Sundin gives me a broken stick when I go, Matt Sundin doesn't remember that. He doesn't remember that. He probably remembers this little kid and he's like, oh my God, this kid's so pumped for a hockey stick. He just wants a broken stick. To be, I think, seen, to be admired because I was such a big fan really impacted me. And this is what I give hockey players credit for. I can't remember a time where a guy didn't give the time, who didn't sign an autograph or didn't take a picture or didn't say something, to me positive. The most important thing and the coolest thing a guy could do was make a compliment about my game. That's all I wanted to do in those hockey schools was I wanted Daryl Sittler to be like, man, you're a hell of a player. I wanted that from him. You know what I mean? I wanted that from Johnny Bauer. I wanted that from them. But they were so humble. They just gave their time. They were so positive. They just loved the fact that you loved the game and you wanted to be out there. And, I love the game, but I love the opportunities that the game has given me. And, I guess you could say that, I know that hockey doesn't last forever. And for me, I knew that it was just as important to be responsible and be a leader. When I left, the last point was I do what I do because the only thing that I ever think about when I left my house at 15 that I didn't want to do was embarrass my parents. That's the only thing that has ever kept my nose clean, that has ever kept me out of trouble. Was I never, ever wanted to embarrass my parents. And it's not that they ever threatened me. No, I just think they're the best. I think I'm very lucky to have parents that I have, and I love how loving they were to me and all 5 of us growing up. I just want to make them proud. I don't want to let them down. So, I don't care what anybody says, that means way more to me than what a GM thinks or a president thinks or a coach thinks or an owner thinks that's never walked a day in my shoes, So, as long as I've made my parents proud and they're happy with how I've carried myself and how I've represented the family, that is the only thing that mattered to me.
Episode is brought to you by my upcoming book, Junior Hockey Giants Road to the NHL. It's coming soon. It features behind-the-scenes stories and original photography of future NHL stars like McDavid, Mitch Marner, PK Subban, and more. To learn more and get updates on the release, please visit hockeydocs.com. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the podcast, leave a review, and share it with someone who loves the game as much as you do. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Junior Hockey Giants.